In so many video games, you see smoke, various kinds of smokes with lots of different colors and sizes. But have you ever wondered how you can create such an effect in Unity? Well, in this video, we are gonna learn just that. We'll learn how we can create this smoke effect with various shapes and colors in Unity. To create the smoke effect, what we are gonna use is the Unity's visual effect graph. It's a very powerful tool that lets you create different types of visual effect with particles. Hey guys, it's me, Apurva. Welcome back to my channel. So, without any further ado, let's jump right in. As you can see, I have a simple Unity scene open here. I'm using the URP. You can also use the HDRP. I've imported a textures folder in my project with different smoke textures and a normal map. I'll put a link in the description where you can download all the textures and the full project. While you're down there, consider subscribing and liking the video. First of all, to create the visual effect or the smoke effect, we'll need a visual effect graph. To install it, we'll open the project manager from the window tab. Then we'll make sure that we're in Unity registry. We'll search for visual effect graph. As you can see, there's our visual effect graph. We'll need to install it. So just click on install. After it has finished installing, we'll right click on our assets folder and go to create visual effects, visual effect graph. I'll call it smoke. To see the effect in action, I'm gonna click and drag it in the hierarchy. Now you can see the effect in action. I'm gonna double click to open the graph. I'm gonna dock it here so that we can see our graph and the scene view. This is the basic effect that you get when you create a visual effect graph. It's pretty similar to shader graph. So if you have any experience with shader graphs, this is gonna help you a lot. I already have a video on water shader that you can check here. You can learn a lot about shader graphs there. Now let's learn what different blocks do here. First, we have spawn. There is only one block, that is spawn rate. It controls how many particles spawns at a time. If I set it to 1, as you can see, it only spawns one particle at a time. And if I increase it to 100, it spawns 100 particles at a time. However, it's hard to tell like this. But for me, let's set it to 10. Second, we have initialize particle. It controls what happens when the particle is spawned. It's kind of like start. In initialized particle, we have capacity. It's storing some memory for your visual effect. Don't set it too high, otherwise you're gonna have some performance issues. It's something that you might not understand at first, so just ignore it. But I'm gonna set it to 60. Then we have set velocity random. This adds random velocity to your particle based on the range that you give on A and B. I'm gonna increase the Y on the A so the particles have somewhat similar velocity but not the same. We have set lifetime random. This determines how long the particle will live. I'm gonna set A to 6 and B to 8 so it lives longer. Then we have our update particles. This controls what happens every second after the particle is spawned. Now we have the output particle. This controls how our output will look. By default, we have quad output. This will not be affected by lighting. So I'm gonna delete it. And then I'm gonna create a new output and search for quad. As you can see, we have two results. One is the previous one that we just deleted, and the second one is the lit quad. Lit means it will be affected by lighting, which in my case I want. So I'm gonna select that. You can also use the previous one if you don't want your particle to be affected by lighting. Now one thing I'm gonna quickly talk about here is that make sure your smoothness is set to 0. By default, it's set to 0.5, and I forgot to tell you about that during the whole tutorial, and that's why, as you can see, the end result of our smoke looks kind of polished. Smoke aren't usually shiny, so make sure your smoothness is set to 0. At the end of the video, I fixed this, but I forgot to talk about this during the video. So make sure you change your smoothness to 0. So the first thing that we are gonna look at is the base color map. This is where your texture goes. So I'm just gonna drag and drop a texture from here. You can select any texture, and depending on the texture, your smoke might look different. As you can see, as soon as I change the texture, it updates in the scene view. Now we have our texture rendering on the particle. You want to make sure that you have soft particles enabled. Right now it's kinda hard to see how the texture is looking because it's so small. So for now, what we can do is click on our quad output and then press space to bring the search bar. Now type set size. I'm gonna select the first one here. It adds a new block here. I'm just gonna increase the size to 2. Now we see the particles, but if you take a closer look, it seems kinda wrong, and that's because it's rendering the whole texture every time.
If we take a look at our texture, as you can see, it's a texture sheet. A texture sheet means you can use it to animate the texture. We have a 8x8 texture sheet. So we want to render only one at a time. Then we will cycle through each one to make it seem like it's animating. So for that, what we need is a flipbook. Under our output particle, we need to change the UV mode from default to flipbook blend. And as you can see, it gives us some new settings and also the smoke has changed a bit. But it's not right quite yet. And that's because here our flipbook size is 4x4. But we know our texture sheet size is 8x8, so we need to change it to 8x8. Now our smoke looks like smoke. If we take a look at our particle, we'll see that every particle has the same rotation, but for my case I want them to have different rotation. So for that, in our initialized particle, we will add a new block called set angle. Right now the channels is set to X, Y and Z, but I only want to randomize the Z axis. So for that, I'm gonna select the Z axis from the channels drop down. Now I can give it a default rotation and all the particles will have the same rotation, but I don't want that. What I want is to randomize the rotation. For that, I'm gonna select the set angle, and on the inspector, I'll see some settings. One of them is random. Currently it's off, but I'm gonna set it to per component, which means every particle will have its own rotation. I want the range to be from 0 to 360. Now you will see that every particle has different rotation. Right now the particles aren't animating. It's spawning with a random texture from the texture sheet and it stays that way. But the reason to use a texture sheet was to animate the smoke. It becomes clear if we set the spawn rate to 1. As you can see, the particles aren't changing their texture. The way we set up everything, it's very easy to animate now. We have our flipbook, but we need a player to play the flipbook. For that, in the update particle, we'll add a new block called flipbook player. Now you can see that the textures are animating. Now I'll increase the spawn rate back to 10. The particles are looking fine from this angle, but if we switch to game view, we can see the smoke from a weird angle. That's because we are rendering a 2D texture on a 3D world. To fix this, what we need to do is create a billboard effect. For that, in our output particle, we'll add a new block called orient face camera position. This will create a billboard effect. If you want to learn more about billboard effect and how you can create it with code, I have a video on that which you can find here. For me, I think the speed of the animation is a little bit faster. So for that, I'm just gonna lower the frame rate on the flipbook player. If you look at the smoke, when it gets higher, it kind of spreads a lot. We can easily fix that by adding some force to it. For that, we can add a force block in our update particle. Right now, the mode is set to absolute, but I want it to be relative. Now we have the velocity settings for our force. I'm gonna set X to -0.2 and Y to 0.5, so the smoke goes up. We can also add some drag by adding a linear drag block. In our linear drag, I'm gonna click on use particle size so that the drag applies depending on the particle size. The bigger the particle, the bigger the drag. I'm gonna set the drag coefficient to 0.1. Now our smoke is a bit together. The particles are starting and dying at the same size, which is a bit unusual. Usually smoke starts small and gradually gets larger. To get such an effect, we can add a size over life block in our output particle. It has a curve that we can edit. So I'm gonna click on the curve and change it to this, but I think the particles are spawning a little smaller, so I'm just gonna drag this part up. Now I think it's okay. What I found is it works best if you set the life first and then change size. So I'm gonna drag this block up. Now it might look a bit off, and that's because we need to delete set size block and add a multiply size block instead. And now I'm gonna set the size to 2. As you can see, now it looks perfect. Another thing we can do is to add color to our smoke. Currently it has our textures color, but we can change it to only use the alpha value so we can deal with the colors ourselves. For that, click on the output particle and in the inspector you will find use base color map. Currently it's set to everything, so I'm gonna click it and deselect color from here. Now it has only alpha values. You can see on the scene view that the smoke has white color now. Now we can change the color. So for that, let's add a set color over life block. What this will does is it will create a fade in and fade out gradient, which will be perfect for our smoke. Just take a look at the smoke. It looks so realistic now. Previously, it was just disappearing the whole texture, which was unrealistic. Now you can change the colors from the gradient itself to have a multicolor smoke. But if you want to change the whole smoke color, what we can do is add a multiply color block. Now you will only have to change the color here and the whole smoke is gonna have that color. Let's make a property out of it so we can change it in the inspector. For that, click on this plus icon. Now you'll get a bunch of options. We'll select color from here. click here and change the name. I'm gonna call it smoke color. Make sure exposed is ticked, otherwise it's not gonna be shown in the inspector. Drag and drop the smoke color here and add a connection like this. Now we can change the smoke color from the inspector. The smoke effect is complete but it's lacking some depth. For that we can add a normal map. To add a normal map we need to click on the output particle and on the inspector tick on use normal map. You'll see that a new field will appear in the output particle block. I'm gonna drag and drop my normal map here. As you can see, it adds a lot more depth to our smoke. I encourage you to play with the settings here and see what does what. You will learn that way a lot faster. For example, I have 4 textures here. Currently, I'm using the first one. Change the textures and see what you can get. Just play with it and have fun. That's the end goal. There we go guys. Now you know how you can create different types and colors of smoke in Unity with the visual effect graph. If you want to learn the shader graph, make sure you go and watch this video to learn how we can create a water shader in Unity.